Hello and welcome to Chew on This. I am delighted today to be joined by my friend and colleague, Dr Claire Plumbly, who is a clinical psychologist and burnout specialist and the author of the book, Burnout, How to Manage Your Nervous System Before It Manages You. Claire and I met on our book writing journey. She was a little bit ahead of me and we've shared what it was like to write, to go through the process, being published, how it felt to get your baby out there and the vulnerability that comes along with it. I am so delighted you're here today, Claire. Do you want to tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Thanks for that introduction. Yes, so I'm Dr Claire Plumbly, clinical psychologist, author now, and I run an associate practice. I'm based in Taunton, which is in Somerset. We're called Plum Psychology, but we also have online practitioners. We support people with trauma training to overcome trauma, anxiety and burnout. We also offer, which is a little bit of a specialist offering, is EMDR intensives, which is a good way of helping people who, want to get improvement quickly.
Yes. Well, an intensive EMDR is very different, isn't it?
Really powerful.
Really powerful and a privilege to be a part of, isn't it?
Yes, I really love that way.
But we could talk about EMDR all day. I feel that I mustn't let that happen so early on. We've been talking a little bit about, haven't we, how burnout disrupts hunger, how it impacts hunger, how eating and burnout are related. Are you able to tell me a little bit about that? What happens, how it manifests?
I think it's interesting because it's often one of those red flags that something might be going on for someone. One of those burnout signs that people might not realise is when they are doing those behaviours around food that they don't want to be doing, eating things that are fast food or convenience food, quick energy releases, rather than their healthy eating patterns. There is reason for that, but we often don't think about that. We just berate ourselves for not eating healthily, don't we?
Absolutely, yes. Food is one of the first things, because it's so essential. We have to have it so many times a day. It's one of the first signs often that something might be not quite right. So what are the reasons?
I explain a lot to my burnt out or stressed out clients about the autonomic nervous system, which is essential for keeping us safe. As soon as it picks up any detection of threat, or like stress coming in is a threat, it will switch gear. So instead of being in our rest and digest mode, which is our green, which hopefully both you and I are in right now, we will switch into our sympathetic mode, or amber. And this is all about quick release of energy, because fight or flight takes up a lot of energy. We start to burn through a lot of our fuel reserves. In the short term, when the adrenaline is first released, appetite might be suppressed a bit. We might start to skip meals or not feel very hungry. But if it starts to move into that chronic stress place, the adrenaline drops and cortisol starts to take over. And cortisol says, I don't know how much longer this is going to go. We're going to have to stock up our reserves. And that's where we want and start to crave food with that quick release of energy, carbs, sugar, that kind of thing.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because when the adrenaline releases, we get all of those gastrointestinal symptoms. We feel nauseous, we get an upset tummy. The last thing we want to do in that heightened stress state is eat often.
Absolutely.
It doesn't take long to change, does it?
Yeah, and I used to always feel very confused by this, because I remember when I was like 22 or so working on a mental health unit, whenever we were on a day shift when it was highly stressful and the alarm was going off a lot, we'd often end the shift, all the clinical staff in the nurse's room, eating our way through a whole packet of biscuits each. I was always so puzzled by that, thinking, what's going on? It was such a relief to understand. Actually, it was just my physiology.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, working on inpatient eating disorder units, of course, food was something we talked about all day long. We had that relationship whereby, our patients weren't eating, but parents and relatives would often bring in great big boxes of chocolate. And we as the clinical team would be diving at the end of a very stressful day, like you've just described. But also it was so readily available. And there was that added dimension of the fact that our patients were starving.
I was also going to add that all of this can dysregulate our blood sugar. So that can lead to that feeling really wired and exhausted and grazing behaviour. So maybe you are eating and grazing, but it's not really replenishing you in the way that you really are looking for and your body's craving.
It's giving you the quick spike of energy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so how do you suggest to your clients that they work with it?
So I think understanding that trying to get your food back on track is going to take a bit of time, because some of it's habits that we've also started to fall into, and patterns which can be addressed. And sometimes it's long-term work as well, because if you've had a long time of dysregulated and long-term stress, it can take a long time to get your gut biome back to a healthy kind of place. So to go really gently and get support as well, not to try and do it on your own.
People find that hard, don't they? Because actually being kind and compassionate and gentle is often the antithesis of what we feel when we're burnt out. It's the antithesis of the kind of push through, drive yourself, just work more, just get on with it, crack on.
Be hard, isn't it? Pacing yourself when you're used to that fast living. You can't really eat fast. I mean, you can eat fast, and I have eaten fast when I'm stressed. I'm sure lots of people listening going, yes, you can, but you're not really tasting, you're not really being in the moment with your food. Something I've suggested to my clients when they are highly stressed is to try and have a hot lunch, even if I'm just heating in the microwave.
That's so interesting.
You can't eat quickly when it's hot, and there's a bit of slowing down and friction there between you. You know, when you buy your sandwiches from the shop and you're tearing open the packet and stuffing it in, I can easily be typing and stuffing it in and carrying on with my work. Whereas if I have to use the microwave, heat it up, put it on a plate, there's a bit of routine there which can slow it down.
But in terms of managing your nervous system and helping yourself to pace it a little bit more, such a good idea. And a hot lunch is something that I don't think I ever have.
Do you not?
No, I don't think I do. Do you?
Well, on days when I'm working at home, which is quite a lot, my husband also works from home quite a lot, we have got into a routine of eating something hot. It might just be heated up falafels in a wrap or something. Yeah. But yeah, sometimes we have eggs and mushrooms and toast. They're not super involved hot meals, but they are hot.
Yeah, it's such a great idea. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because also one of the things that I think often gets in the way when you're stressed is thinking that you have the time to do anything with food, and how you even introduce 2 or 3 minutes to prepare something.
Absolutely. I mean, even if you're at work and you've taken a packed lunch, you know, bento boxes are quite a sweet idea. My sister-in-law lives in Japan. She kind of introduced that idea. You just have a box with different segments. And if you've got crackers and cheese, you can put them together, and that slows you down a bit. When you're stressed, you kind of think the last thing I have time for is like faffing around, just need to get it. It's fuel. It's one of those things you can start to practice, create a little bit of routine and friction so that it's not just being stuffed down so you can't taste it. What techniques do you tend to suggest?
Well, I suggest connecting if you can eat, even if it's over a screen with a colleague or a friend, so you take a break. I am the ultimate culprit of eating at random times, standing up, walking around, not engaging at all in those moments. When I'm stressed or when I'm back to back, actually, I often just skip it altogether, which is, I can't believe I'm fessing up.
We love your honesty, Anna. We love your honesty. Psychologists don't have it completely perfect. We're humans.
I am totally inconsistent, and I have terrible, in some ways I have great habits with the family, with the kids. I always cook and we sit down together every night, but as you know only too well, I burnt out pretty heftily. The idea that I would spend any time preparing, I didn't even put it on the plate. I'd just open the fridge and eat something out the fridge and disappear. I don't think I ever sat down at lunchtime, or I just, these
How
things.
do you feel remembering back to that time?
Well, some of it is me anyway. You know, I am not brilliant at all of the things that I recommend. I don't always practice when I preach when it's just me. I absolutely do with the kids. And I am big into connecting over meals. So actually, looking back at that time, it was more realising how difficult I found creating the space to eat. And on some days, the idea of food just made me feel sick, and on other days I was really hungry, but it was unpredictable and very varied. I don't know if that's something that you can explain scientifically. Sometimes you kind of just almost in collapse and you don't want to have anything, and other days you're almost ravenous. Is there some science for that, do you think?
I mean, well, we were talking about the nervous system at the start of this. If we think about the third branch of the nervous system, we talked about rest and digest, your green mode, when everything's nicely digesting and hopefully you're connected to your appetite in a healthy way. Sympathetic amber, when you're feeling frenzied and wolfing everything down, not tasting. And then the third part is the dorsal part of your nervous system. And that's more of a shutdown place about immobilizing for survival. And if we're dipping into that, you will lose your appetite and your digestion is offline, because it's all about how can I just stay safe. And in the animal kingdom, the animal will flop. Conserve energy until the danger has passed. So you're not burning through energy necessarily heavily at that point. You are kind of just going into that.
But we all have different nervous system responses, don't we? We don't all do all 5 of the Fs.
Yes.
Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, flop. The way we are wired is different, isn't it?
I always say to my clients that your nervous system will choose for you best in that situation, which can be a bit confusing if someone is in a situation where they've frozen, for example, because I work a lot, or have done in the past, with sexual assault. That can be confusing. Why did I freeze?
Yes.
When your frontal lobes come back online, you come back into your rest and digest mode, you can harshly judge yourself for how you behaved in a moment. But yes, it can also be related to your history, and what served you when you were younger might be a default for you.
Absolutely. I always say to my clients that actually when we develop a response or a way of coping, it's because it worked for us in the moment where we really needed it. It may not work for us now, 20 years down the line or 5 years down the line, but it always came in as something protective, not punitive. We have to understand why it came into our life and how it served us, and then we can understand whether it still serves us and how we might want to change it going forward. But I wonder too, I often find myself in a mix of more than one of the Fs. So my two kind of go-tos are freeze and fight. Which is like having one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake. And you can't go anywhere.
That functional freeze, I think the phrase is for that, where you've got the energy of your sympathetic, but you're frozen in the kind of dorsal. It's highly frustrating and means you're not being very productive and all the things we highly value in our culture.
Exactly. Yeah. You've absolutely touched on it. That drive for productivity. How do you find that impacts eating or eating behaviours?
Yeah, I mean, definitely we'll find that people don't value the space around eating and food. What's that Ultra Processed People book? Have you read that? There's a scenario in that where he talks about, how, Boots developed their kind of quick lunches just so you could get fuel in you as quickly as possible. And I do think that's become part of our culture. Even in France, where they're famous for having their 2-hour lunch break, aren't they, in the workday? I think even in places like Paris, big cities where we're much more likely to be driven to have results quite quickly, they're starting to lose their lunch breaks and do more activities like us through lunch. So I think it's difficult. And if our culture of people around us are all eating through our lunch breaks, it's very hard for us to then go, but I'm going to take my full hour, thanks. Because people are looking at you thinking, well, get her.
And how do you help your clients then to say, actually, if you're in that, what I think is a really precarious place to be psychologically and physiologically, when you're coming really close to burnout, or maybe you've hit it, but you're in that almost like just about to slide down the stress curve. How do you recommend that your clients buy back a little bit of that lunch break? What should they say to their employers? What should they say to their colleagues, to their families, to their friends to help them through that?
So I often suggest trying to get a compassionate accountability buddy.
Compassionate accountability buddy.
Yeah, that's a bit of a mouthful. But it's just someone who is in your team, or maybe not in your team, maybe if you're working from home, someone who you can kind of, like you were saying, like call or have an arrangement. We'll stop at the same time. I'm going to send you a WhatsApp when I'm stopping and you do the same and we will both pause. Whatever you've got as a lunch break, if it's non-existent at the moment, you're just trying to increase it in small increments. So if you can manage 5 minutes to begin with, take that as a win and start to try and build up. The other thing I also talk about is, have you heard of that phrase?
I haven't.
Fear of switching off. If you are in that place and you feel like I can't afford to take my lunch break because I can't afford to stop, that is a sign of where you're at in your nervous system, that you're in your amber sympathetic gear. It's actually a sign that you do need to take a break. Ploughing on means you will be in the gear that isn't conducive for good work, because you're in your threat mode and your amygdala part of your brain, where thinking is more rigid, we're more likely to catastrophize, we're more likely to have quick problem-solving thoughts rather than long-term creative thoughts. A lot of what people do in their jobs requires more of that whole brain approach. Your frontal lobes to be back online. A break actually will help you to do that.
So, that's really important, isn't it? I often say to my clients, do the opposite.
Right.
If you want to restrict, if you want to power through, take a break. When people are struggling, I often think, do the opposite.
It's a nice, quick rule of thumb.
Rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Just do the opposite. That can be quite helpful in those moments. But just to go back a little bit, I think it might be helpful to explain just a little bit about what the amygdala is for those who may not know, and the frontal lobes and how it all works.
So obviously we're talking about the autonomic nervous system. We've gone through the 3 branches of green, amber, and then that red shutdown. The part of the brain that's really involved with this is the threat response center of the amygdala. So as soon as our system picks up cues of danger, the amygdala sounds the alarm. It's the one that presses the big red button and says, adrenaline, release. And that impacts all of the body, your brain and your digestion and your internal organs.
And it's the amygdala, isn't it, that our people refer to as the chimp brain?
Yes.
Or the monkey brain.
Yeah, exactly. There's a few different metaphors that have been written about and developed. So I'm sure if you're listening, you probably have a sense of one of those because they're quite well established now. And it's just helpful to know that when we're in that place, our thinking is different. It's a different style of thinking. It's all about short term, how I'm going to sort this out. The fight or flight is about where's the danger, how am I going to overcome it? If that's been triggered by a deluge of emails or a problem at work that you can't fix, or how am I going to pick the kids up when I'm meant to be over here, and anything like that is a modern day version of a threat that will trigger us. Yeah. The thinking becomes very focused and narrow and rigid, and we can't think more clearly about things that will be good for us in the long term, like longer term goals, for example, which is why it's harder to remember our healthy eating goals in a moment like that as well. And we're more likely to just go, I just need food quickly to get through this moment.
And so to move sideways a little bit, if you're a parent and having to feed your kids, it's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what would you suggest? Do you have any suggestions? Do you ever see that play out? Or have you got clients where the whole parenting around food is something that is either contributing to the stress or that the stress is impacting?
Have you got a specific example you're thinking of?
So often meal times, or actually it can be at any stage, can't it? Because when you're a mum, particularly if you're a new mum, I think we've both been there, you often do feel in survival, how am I going to manage it all? How am I going to juggle everybody's needs? Your needs do become very bottom of the pack, don't they? And if you've got kids who struggle to eat, whether it's picky eating or whether they're anxious, later on with eating disorders, suddenly food becomes a source of threat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how do we manage when food becomes the source of threat?
Yeah.
It's difficult because the very thing that might be able to help us is the very thing that is putting us into that amber or red.
Yeah, absolutely. And just knowing if you go to that place around food in particular already, and then it's going to be worsened by all of the narratives around what we should and shouldn't be giving our kids. And I know you're really good on your social media about that, because I think that activates a lot of people.
Should is such a tricky word, isn't it? When we say we should do something, it means we don't actually make a choice. It's a stick with which to beat ourselves. I should do this. The communication is I must, I've got it wrong. Choice is irrelevant. I just have to do this thing, even if I don't want to, rather than taking that moment to pause and go, do I want to? Do I want to buy into this? Do I want to be terrified if my child eats some chocolate or has a sweet, or if I do, or if one day I don't make a freshly cooked meal and I do stick some fish fingers and chips in the air fryer and go, well, I can't do much more than that. About giving yourself permission that is good enough.
Yeah.
Because it's not about perfection, it's about good enough.
Absolutely.
But actually many of the messages we receive, particularly around productivity and around parenting and around food, all focus on a kind of aspirational perfect. And I was just feeling really curious about what that does to our nervous system when we sit in that aspirational perfect.
That's one of those rigid types of thinking styles I'm talking about from the amygdala, those high expectations. Understanding where they come from sometimes is helpful, but also that a lot of the messages we get from our culture feed into them, unfortunately. And actually taking a bit of time to think about, when do you feel good in your family? When do you feel good about, your relationship with work, your work-life balance? And so for us, it is about having, I don't know, cheat meals. I'm putting a quote. Is that phraseology you like? Or no? Okay, but there you go.
So pre-prepped, freezer.
Quick and easy. Yeah.
Quick and easy.
Yeah.
That actually describes what it is, whereas cheat tells us nothing.
Yes,
it just
true.
Tells us that there's an assumption that it's not good.
I like it. But also, I really value, and I know you write about this in your book as well, making meal times a time for connection, because on a nervous system level, when we're connecting, we're releasing oxytocin, we're feeling good, we're building our family structure and bonds, mealtime and shared moments in the day like that. We have a busy family, we all have different activities.
Yeah.
So when we make time to have a proper meal and stop, that's reinforcing that we like each other and we enjoy each other's company and we're co-regulating, which is good.
I love the concept of co-regulating. Yeah. I love it. I love it with pets, with humans. I think that's where animals can be so amazing.
Yes.
But again, just to describe what co-regulation is, because I think you and I, we live and breathe it, don't we? But maybe not everyone else does.
So human autonomic nervous systems can self-regulate to a certain extent, which is when you manage your emotions. You can move up and down those gears between amber, red and green. But something that's really special is that we can regulate between ourselves. Someone with a regulated nervous system can loan their nervous system out to someone else who's dysregulated, and the cues they're giving off through their warmth, their facial expression, their safe body language helps that person to pick up, oh, actually, maybe I'm okay. And they start to calm down. This is really important for us.
And does that have to be with physical touch, or can it just be being in the same shared space?
Shared space, like we can be co-regulating right now. I mean, touch and hugs are obviously a lovely way of doing that.
I mean, I ended up getting to a place with my daughter when she was very stressed. I was like, do you want a hug? And she was like, no, I've just got to go and work. And I was like, do you know what? If I give you a hug, it will co-regulate you. Take my hug.
Did she?
Yes. And then she went, it's about 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Yeah. And she went, that's really weird. I feel a bit better. And I went, let's just stay here then.
Really, and you don't need words then, do you?
No, you don't need words.
Because that's often how we approach a problem, is trying to fix it verbally for someone. But actually, we all know that's sometimes not what we need. We just need someone to step into the space with us and go, this is rubbish. And actually, a hug can do that.
One of the things that you talk about in your book, which I found super helpful and I often recommend, so my friend and colleague, Claire, she says in her book, read her book, that you talk about micro moments and micro breaks. And I think that's so helpful because we often assume, particularly if we're stressed, that a break needs to be prolonged and we don't feel we have the time.
Yeah.
So how do you build those in?
So what I always suggest to my clients is to think about the transition points in your day and use that as a moment to take a mini break. I said this recently on Fix It Radio and people listening were like, transition points of the day, what are you talking about? For them, it would be like when they have finished painting a wall or doing whatever job it is, and then often we'll go and start kind of moving on to like looking at the inbox of the jobs that have come in, immediately moving on to the next thing. So for us, it would be after this podcast, before the next thing. That's a transition point of the day. So just tuning in, what is your body saying? Because we often crash to the next thing without doing that. You're setting yourself up to go into the next moment of the day really well if you've tuned in. So tuning in, do I need a stretch? Do I need a glass of water? Do I need to move my body a little bit because the energy's dipping? Those are really nice opportunities to become more attuned to your body as well.
And when you say tuning in, do you mean taking a moment to go, okay, let me see how I feel, do a body scan almost and go, what do I need physically? What do I need? Because often people think that as a psychologist, all we're interested in is thoughts. Yes. But actually, there's so much that can be gained and understood and altered if you go through the body, isn't there?
I think tuning into the body is important and has sometimes been overlooked. The quality of your mind in any given moment will also give you a clue as to where you are in your nervous system. If you're thinking, like we said earlier, I don't have time for this is nonsense. That says to me, you need a moment to come back into your body and be present, stretch it out or release a bit of that pent up energy through movement and exercise.
So I must ask you about movement and exercise, how that impacts our mood, nervous system, our state of stress, and indeed food, because whether we talk about movement or exercise, we can think of them as on a continuum, can't we? We know that exercise is really good for mood, for stress, for regulation, for processing excess adrenaline out of the body. It'd be great to hear how you suggest we get into that, what kind of movement works.
I often give workshops about how to switch off at the end of the day. When I've explained about the nervous system, the 3 modes that I described, if you want to get from amber into green, think of yourself as having an excess of adrenaline, cortisol, those kind of stress hormones, and excess of energy quite often. So a nice way of doing that is to use some movement to burn through it until you feel pleasantly tired. For me, when I'm working from home, if I've got the kids in the house, I can't go out. It might be running up and down the stairs a few times or going into the kitchen doing kitchen disco as I'm cooking. Sometimes also cleaning, which I always think sounds a bit strange. But for me, if I start cleaning between the grout in the bathroom and getting all the pink off, that's so satisfying for me. And I like that fast energy of my arm.
I mean, that says a lot. You love cleaning.
Don't love cleaning. I get annoyed if people expect me to clean, but if I'm using it strategically to manage myself. Whereas if we've dipped into that really heavy dorsal shutdown place, thinking of yourself more as a bit of a frozen place, you might need to gently thaw out. My hands have gone up to my chest. You can probably hear the sound of my necklace. I'll often warm my hands up by rubbing them together and pop them over my heart, or give myself a self-hug. In the absence of someone else there to hug me, like you do for your daughter, you can still activate that attachment chemistry we were talking about with co-regulation. If you kind of think of someone who you care about and what they think of you, or even telling yourself some words that you need to hear in that moment. this will pass, or I've got this, or I'm doing my best.
I'm going to be okay. I can cope is really powerful.
Yes, I can handle this.
Because actually in those moments of arousal, we often feel like we can't.
Yes.
We're overwhelmed by it. We have no control over it.
Yeah.
We are kind of at the will of the stress. Just reminding yourself.
Yeah. And you're bringing your frontal lobes back online, which is,
And the frontal lobes do what?
So that's the other part of the brain at the front, which is responsible for advanced thinking, I guess, where we're planning, we're thinking strategically. Our language centres are housed there.
So our human brain.
Yes.
Our human, rational, logical, kind of the bit that we'd love to think we really lived in, but actually we don't maybe live in it. We oscillate. We don't live in it as much as we'd like to believe sometimes, I think.
Yep.
We're much more governed by our emotional centre, by our amygdala, because that's our survival system, than we are by our human, rational brain. So how do things like sugar crashes in the afternoon or nighttime eating that some people engage in, do you see that as a nervous system response, or is that more habitual?
I see that as that kind of dysregulated blood sugar stuff going on. If you've been stressed throughout the day, it's going to make it hard for your body to go into that nice sleepy mode in the evening. For example, your body's going to be all over the place, not knowing what it needs. Interoception means when we're tuning into our body signals inside, and that can go a bit wonky when we have been highly stressed for a long time, because our brain is filtering out the non-essential cues, whether we're full and feeling sated or not, and it'll be focused on more like what it considers to be essential for the moment, if there's daily heart racing, that kind of thing.
It is really tricky, isn't it? It is really tricky. And I was thinking back as you were talking about something that might tie in with both of the things that we both recommend potentially. Often before a meal, it's really helpful to take a micro moment, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and just tune in to your body, reassure yourself that you're okay. And then you can start to eat rather than just eating on the go, eating al desco, which has become a thing.
Desco. I've heard that one.
Have you not heard of that one? Instead of al fresco, you eat al desco. And that's kind of the norm, particularly in highly pressured jobs. You just grab it, eat at your desk, carry on, don't have a break.
I mean, if you're trying to take that moment with that micro pause, if you're holding your sandwich in your hand, like smelling it, and you're starting to switch on that ability to be tuned in again. And that's really important. You're trying to improve that relationship between yourself and food, where stress and busyness has kind of eroded it.
Yeah. It's funny because I always talk about smell being so powerful. And often when I'm doing trauma work, I say smell is one of the most underrated senses in terms of grounding and bringing you back into your body. But I had never thought about taking a moment to smell your food before you eat it.
Well, all the senses are relevant there, aren't they? Like touching, smelling, looking at it, really looking at it and anticipating it. We do that, don't we, in mindfulness, when we learn how to do mindfulness. You do that with a raisin, and then if
you do it with a raisin, I tend to do it with a lemon.
No.
So if you imagine that you've got this bright yellow, gorgeous lemon, and you cut it into quarters, and you see a quarter of a lemon, and you imagine yourself putting that quarter of a lemon in your mouth and biting it, you probably start to salivate immediately. It really illustrates the power of the mind, that the idea of that really tangy, sharp lemon already makes us salivate. Yeah. And that the mind really helps us with that.
And that's all that's all kind of capabilities in the frontal lobes and those bits of the brain you're trying to get back online. So it just supports the whole system to calm down, come back into the moment.
So if you had, and I realise I might have just throw this at you. If you had really quick and easy tips for helping regulate yourself in a moment of stress so that you can bring your frontal lobes back online, eat something and start to reverse the cycle, what would they be?
Well, one of them is I always recommend to my clients to try and make themselves a soothing kit, which they can just bring around with them, pop it in a pencil case or a glasses case, something personal to them that helps them to come back down their nervous system gears into green.
Like what?
So anything, again, think of the 5 senses, anything that's going to help soothe the 5 senses. Right. We've already started to talk about a lot of them here. So it might be something to do with smell. Is there a favourite smell? I've had people who have chosen like a dog or cat toy and put it in there because just holding it, smelling it reminds them of their cat. It could be some of those affirmations that we said we find helpful, writing them down, putting them in. And then a reminder to embody them as well. So hands on heart, doing something with your body as you read them. Don't just quickly read them, but really step into them.
So easy, isn't it, to just go, oh yeah, I can cope, it'll pass.
Yeah,
and actually you've undermined the
and
whole
then
exercise.
it's not working. You've got to think about your tone of voice, the pacing. It's the whole shebang. If you think about someone who was saying those things to you, if they said it in an offhand way or quickly, that wouldn't really start to touch the surface. You might have to repeat it 3 or 4 times.
And grounding.
I think absolutely grounding. So the types of things that I often will do in a session, for example, is look around the room and see if there's anything in the room there's only one of. Then you can go up a little, anything in the room there's 2 of and only 2 of. You know, you're having to look around, moving your body slowly, which is all nice cues for safety in terms of your body kind of feeling like I'm here. There's nothing actually here to be scared of or fearful of, which is also really important.
And do you find that literally reminding yourself you're safe, I'm here in the moment, I'm here in the room, I'm safe? Do you find that one is helpful?
I don't tend to personally use that one so much, but I do tend to use this is not an emergency quite a lot. So, you know, we're in a traffic jam. We're going to be late for a guitar lesson.
Oh, yeah.
This is not an emergency, Claire. This is not an emergency. This is a guitar lesson.
That's really nice. And actually, with eating, just to come back full circle, most of the time, that would be really relevant. This is not an emergency.
Yes.
Whatever I eat, it's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
It's fish fingers and chips. It's nourishing. It's food.
Yeah.
It's fine. I guess where that would be different is if there was some eating disorder at play, but then you'd have to be thinking about, that's another episode, exactly, you'd be thinking about something different. One of the other things that happens with stress is that we become completely overwhelmed with decision fatigue.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of those red flags for the fact that you might be quite deep into burnout. Decisions just feel completely overwhelming, and that can be in lots of different areas of your life. But how it might show up with food is around, you know, I can't be bothered to think about what to eat. Just someone tell me what to eat. I've definitely had people stood in front of the fridge just going, there's nothing here I can eat, or in Tesco's, and then they don't eat.
And a supermarket, let's face it, can be quite overwhelming.
Yeah,
I mean, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know what to choose.
There's so much choice, isn't there? And especially if you're then frozen with, but I want to choose something healthy and nutritious, or something that ticks my vegan or pescatarian preferences, and I want something that's quick and convenient. If something's got to tick a lot of boxes, we might just go, do you know what, I'm just going to eat a block of cheese out the fridge or something quickly.
And a lot of people self-soothe with food. Is there a physiological or neurological function with that, or is it about positive associations of food dating back to childhood? Do you have any ideas or thoughts?
I think if food was something you used to soothe yourself or were taught to soothe yourself growing up, I think it will particularly hold an important function. But food also, yummy food, like we were saying, does release dopamine. It feels good. So we will seek that out when we need a lift.
And I guess that's where it fits in, doesn't it, with parents or with what's on social media about, you know, oh no, it's terrible, you don't want to eat too much sugar because it just hits the dopamine system, and that actually becomes something that's worrying rather than something that we can be curious about and understand.
But also, like, and what does that mean I need right now? You know, what's the longer term need here? If your body's trying to fix it quickly in the moment and it doesn't feel like a long-term strategy or the always to turn to strategy, then turning inwards and going, what's my body trying to tell me here? Sometimes we will only listen when it's really shouting at us. If you build up that relationship with your body, doing those micro pauses and listening regularly, it doesn't need to start shouting at you, creating really strong, powerful cravings, for example.
And actually, that's something you talk about a lot in your book, isn't it? Is building the relationship with your body, how to learn to listen to it, how to understand what it's telling you.
Absolutely.
And it's so helpful. And actually, I think often so underrated. More broadly, people often think it's woo-woo, but it's not. It's absolutely fundamental to being able to understand what you're feeling, being able to regulate yourself, feeling more in control.
Well, we're not taught that that's important. When I was a kid at school, we were taught that we didn't need the toilet until break time. And quite often now I'll tell myself I'm not stopping to eat until I've finished a task, rather than just thinking, well, I'm hungry. And it doesn't matter when this task gets finished, whether it's before or after lunch. We are so used to overriding our body functions. And actually, I was in a podcast with somebody else who's when they were a doctor, would say they could go 12-hour shifts without going to the toilet because they wouldn't drink. And if you think about what an A&E ward is like...
I mean, you need your brain to be hydrated.
Yeah, and basic human needs. But to avoid needing to stop and run to the loo, they would just not drink. And like,
that's really not helpful.
And it's just really sad. But I mean, I've been guilty of thinking, you know, I won't have a coffee now because I don't want to have to keep needing the loo.
We just interfere with what is otherwise a beautifully set up system.
Our body knows what to do.
Our body knows what to do.
Trust it.
Trust it. Oh, that's been so helpful and so interesting. And a big shout out to your book, which I have read, I recommend all the time. Is such a brilliant, useful guide to burnout, to nervous system, to what happens in our bodies and how we can wrestle back a sense of calm when we're feeling so overwhelmed.
The UK version is Burnout, How to Manage Your Nervous System Before It Manages You. And the American version is The Trauma of Burnout. They are also available as audiobooks on Audible and Spotify. I tend to hang out a little bit on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook.
And you're on many a podcast, aren't you?
Yes. You can find me talking about burnout in relation to different things like parenting, running your own business, ADHD. I have juicy conversations like this.
Thank you so much for joining me.
I've enjoyed this a lot.
Me too. Thank you. If this episode resonated, please follow, share and review. And if you're navigating your own issues, please remember that you're not alone and that change and recovery are both possible. Join me next time as we continue exploring the psychology, science and lived realities of how and why we eat. See you then.